Right, okay, folks. Welcome to the latest edition of the Nice and Nasty podcast. I've got no idea what number it is, what we're up to. But for this week, I'm delighted to entertain. I'm delighted to invite and have somebody along that I have known pretty much since I got dial-up internet, and it's Mr. Rob Everklear. Good evening, or sorry, good morning, Rob. It's obviously we're a wee bit. You're in Canada, so it's morning time there, and it's night time here. Thanks for joining me, mate. How are you?
I'm all right. Good morning. Good evening. I'm a little groggy, to be honest. Just back from a long travel, but I'm okay. I had most of a night's sleep, and should be fine. If I'm not coherent, you can always cut me off and say, and we'll see you next time.
You know what I always love about you, like Canadians, Americans, you've got the voice for radio. I sound like a little thug whereas you've got a voice. You could be doing the CNN news, whatever. You've got a voice for radio. You've got a face for
good evening.
You've got a face for TV, but you've also got a voice for radio.
Oh, thank you very much. That's flattering. I have had people tell me that about my voice, and
yeah,
I think the reason for that is that I sing. I've been in a choir for a little over 20 years, and I think that has an effect on on just the way you speak and talk, present yourself, and how you maybe project your voice or something. I've had people tell me that before, though, and it's flattering. So thanks.
You actually don't sound too dissimilar to John Romero. In fact, I could actually we could do two of these, and we can put out one as John Romero. How does that sound?
Sounds good. I think he might have some things to answer for. If I'm not mistaken, one of my bad games is
no spoilers. Yeah, brilliant. But yeah, I mean, you and I go back a long, long way, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I first got the internet, the first thing you typed in, well, for me, was like Commodore 64, Jeff Minter, because he was obviously still a well-known guy, and this thing called Yak Yak appeared, and I didn't know what it was. I clicked in it, and this kind of ties into where I got my nickname. It asked for a username, and I think I put my full name in, and I can't remember if it said this has been taken, whatever. And then, or it might be I think my mate was with me. He says, "No, you don't put your real name in. You put a kind of made up name." And his name at the time, which kind of is a nice segue into John Romero, he was a big Doom fan. And apparently when you kill somebody, it's called a frag. And because he was particularly good, he called himself, he was a self-proclaimed fragmeister. And when I came to put a username in, I thought, what can I put in? And I had literally just discovered MAME. The same friend gave me a floppy disk with a DOS version of MAME, and that was just like, wow, the best bit of software ever. So I saw the disk, I thought, MAME Meister, there you go, bang, that was it, and it's stuck. And anyway, yes, I joined said forum Yak Yak, which was a forum. It still goes. It's still a thing.
Yeah, it is still a thing. I don't drop in there too often anymore.
Yeah, I go on very odd occasion. There's very, very little people still frequent it. I noticed they've moved across to Discord, and if you go into Discord, you'll see the same bleatings, show me your stuff, musicians, but they've kind of migrated across here. But the Yak Yak forums was a forum for all you younger listeners. A forum was the precursor to kind of Discord. You have headings and little groups to chat, etc., etc. And this one was primarily, it wasn't primarily, it was 100% dedicated to Lamasoft, Jeff Minter, and all the work that he's kind of done. And it was a fantastic place. It really, really was. And Rob, you were Everklear on Yak Yak, and
that's right.
Yeah, you were there. How did you get to know about Yak Yak then?
Same kind of thing. Jeff Minter, I was aware of from mid 80s when I was a teenager, just from games on the Atari primarily. Probably the first one that I ever played of his was Hover Bubber, and which I still like to this day. I actually haven't played it for a while, but in other games. And then on the ST, same kind of thing. So I was aware of him. I liked his software, his games, and he was a shareware pioneer as well.
Yeah.
I remember buying a UK magazine that they're crazily expensive at the time because they were imported, and with a cover disc and I think it was Lamatron, probably was Lamatron, or maybe. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And so some of his stuff was on there. And I remember, I think it was Lamatron, and it was, send £5 if you like the game to this address. Can't remember if I sent him some money or not. Probably not, because I was in university at the time. So probably didn't. I know I didn't have any money. So just enough to buy a magazine.
I'll ask him next Sunday.
Yeah.
Did Everklear ever give you that £5?
You'd be like, that deadbeat.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And Jeff Minter, I was down at a recent Zap Live event thing, and Jeff was there with Giles giving a talk, and he says Lamatron, they introduced shareware, and it wasn't like the shareware that other companies used. You weren't getting a kind of a limited option. You weren't getting a limited version of software. You were getting the full game, and if you liked it, you could pay for it. If you wanted to keep it and play it and not pay, then that's fine. So it was the proper thing. And I think he said it was ridiculous. He says, all these envelopes are coming through with £5 in it, and he says he made a lot of money out of it.
Oh, nice. That's nice. That's really good to hear. Yeah. And then I think going way back, I think I actually found him in some places on Usenet. I don't know if that was something you ever participated in.
Was that the IRC thing? Chat? Similar
idea, but no, it was in a way it was like an evolution of the old BBS things to online. It was, they had channels and people would post to these channels, and you could have discussion threads. It was very much like the forum, actually, the old Yak forum. But it was a special internet protocol that it has its own. If you're into the technical aspects of it, it had its own protocol. And so you could actually go back, and there are Usenet archives around. I think I've even found some of my old writings from back in the late 80s, early 90s occasionally. But anyway, so I think I found him on there a little bit. He also used to write columns in one of the magazines, ST Format, I think. So that was another place. And yeah, exactly like you, I was online and looking for Atari things and Minter, and found Yak. So there it is. That's how that would have been our first connection for sure. And that's going back now too. That's
talking 1990. Probably 1997, I think it was. Pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
That is, how many years ago is that? 25 years ago.
I don't want to know.
That's insane. That's absolutely insane. So, what I've always found interesting, I mean, Commodore is obviously an American company, as is Atari. Am I right in thinking that, now, I don't know if it's the same in the US as it is in Canada, was Atari bigger than Commodore?
I don't think so, but it was, I get the impression, or not even the impression, I know it was much bigger than it was in your part of the world.
Yeah.
Like I had a bunch of friends that had both. Not both. Not unless they were wealthy. But what I mean is, I knew a number of people with Ataris, and I knew a number of people with Commodores.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in the UK, obviously the ZX Spectrum, Sir Clive Sinclair, God rest his soul, he brought out the affordable micro,
yes.
And I never owned one until 15 years ago. It was selling for like £100, whereas the Commodore 64 was £299, whatever. and the Atari 800 had pretty much kind of died a death at that point, unfortunately. I mean, the early Ataris, the Atari, you'll be able to tell me exactly because obviously you are the Mr. Atari. The Atari 800 and Atari 400, did they come out at the same time? Did they get released pretty much?
They were, I believe so, or very hot on each other's heels, I think. I didn't get one that early. I was a teenager. But I did know a couple people with in fact, it doesn't matter. I think it was a dad of a friend of mine at the time. He and his wife were moving from their house into just maybe 10 years ago. You know, as we do, we all get elderly, and through the grapevine, I got word that he was getting rid of his Atari, and so I have it in a box here somewhere. So I think it's a 400. Yes, so the 400 and 800s, one was sort of the higher end version of the other. The 800 had, I think it was the 800 that had a proper keyboard, not a membrane keyboard.
Yep, 64K.
If I'm not mistaken, and 64K. And I believe it was 16K for the 400. And then there was another generation that came along, which is when I got into it, which was the 600 XL and the 800 XL. I spent my entire summer's wage on a 600 XL, a printer, an Atari printer, and a disk drive.
So did the 800 XL not come out before the 600? What was the 600 a cut down version, sort of cheaper version, the slimline?
I think they were, well, it might have come out after. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think the idea was similar to the 400 and the 800 in that one was a sort of a bit more economical version. But yeah, it was definitely cut down. It had less RAM, and it was, I think, physically a bit smaller as well. I remember it being pretty small, you know, at the time. Well, not that I really knew better, but I was used to like an Apple II in school, and those were beasts. So
huge things. I mean, in the UK, as I alluded to earlier on, sort of 1984, 1985, there were like, I'm going to call it the playground wars. The thing is, I always laugh when people talk about swapping cassettes with their school friends. I was working, I was in a full-time job at that point, but yeah, it was very much Spectrum, Commodore 64, and the thing is, both machines are completely different. You know, they're on either end of the, no pun intended, either end of the spectrum. I remember somebody summing up the sort of the computers in the UK. There was a handful of people who owned the BBC. They were usually from upper class families. Way too much money. They'd go skiing and all that kind of thing on their holidays. There was the snotty nosed poor kids who had the Spectrum. There was the kids with money that had the Commodore 64. There was the oddballs that owned the Amstrad, and then there was the cool kids that had the Atari. and I used to go to a computer club every Wednesday, I think it was, at the local school, and it was a piracy club. We took along, we just copied games, and I actually heard that the guy, I saw a post on Facebook for the guy that used to kind of go along and just kind of supervise, and he would kind of go out. He passed away recently. Roy, I think his name was. But yeah, he either knew and completely turned a blind eye, or he had no idea what we were doing. But yeah, it was Commodore 64s. There was more Spectrums than anything. There was a lot of Commodore 64s, and the Commodore 64s were usually the older kids like myself, and you know, we didn't really frequent with the Spectrum kids. And then there was one little guy, I can always remember, he was extremely disfigured, and we always felt kind of sorry for him. And he had an Atari 800, and he was the only person that he used to load up Stealth. And I didn't even talk to him, and I would walk past and I would see Stealth running. And I always remember thinking, that looks really, really good. But I'm not going to tell him that. I'm not going to give him any, you know, kudos, whatever. But yeah, it was a Spectrum and Commodore 64. So was there a kind of like a playground war in Canada? And was it Commodore Atari? Because from what I can really tell, they're pretty much the same computers, other than a few differences with sound.
Yeah, there was. The Playground Wars were definitely a thing. Although I guess in my case it would have been the Cafeteria Wars because I was in high school at the time. But here, high school in Canada, high school refers to the last 3 grades that you do. The U.S. has a different naming system that I've never quite understood. But anyway, they talk about sophomores and juniors and whatever. So I'm not clear what's what. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It was Commodore Atari for the most part. I guess there was Apple II, but that was sort of a previous generation of computer, and nobody really bragged about having an Apple II, I don't think, because it was also the ones that we had in school. So everyone that was interested in computers, it was, they were pretty familiar with the Apple IIs. So yeah, not the bragging, but the fighting, the playground fighting was always Commodore Atari. But I like both, to be honest. I don't think I ever participated. I'm sure I participated a little bit because I had an Atari, but I had friends with the Commodores, and there was a bunch of games on Commodore that I really loved. So
without wanting to generalize, there are certain games that it's fantastic on the Commodore 64. Yeah, Drop Zone. I'm going to stick my neck out and be controversial. Bruce Lee. I think Bruce Lee in the Atari is definitely a better version. Fort Apocalypse, Rescue and Fractalis, all the kind of LucasArts games, the Eidolon, etc., etc. Issue 1 of Zap magazine, the late and great Archer McLean, and issue 1, there was a bit that said, "What do you think of the Commodore 64?" And they spoke to Tony Crowther of Alligator Software. They spoke to Andy Walker, who's going to be on the stream next week off Task Set. Nice. Jeff Minter. And then they spoke to Archer McLean, and he said, yeah, the Commodore 64 is a great machine, but the Atari 800 is better. And you're like, holy shit, I've just lashed out the best part of 300 quid, and this guy's telling me that I've made the wrong choice. But moving forwards, the later games, while they were still getting converted to the Atari 800, were awful. Some of the Atari 800 games that were really good in the Commodore 64 were absolutely diabolical.
No question. That was always frustrating. Speaking of the cassette swapping, I had a good friend who lived fairly close to me. We were rural at the time. Not like, I don't know if this is true in the UK or in Scotland, but there's sort of a semi-rural boundary around the cities where people have they're called acreages. They're just larger properties and typically a bit larger houses, and there's you'd have 2 acres or 5 acres of land that you're living on, and we anyway, so they were grouped together. They were done in developments called subdivisions, and so I had a friend in the same subdivision who was also in my school. So because we were in the same subdivision, we were best pals because it was hard to get to, unless you had a car, which we didn't. Bicycles was the thing. So he was and continues to be to this day, to be honest. He's one of the few people I'm still in touch with from back then. He was a swapper. He had to have everything. So he was a wheeler dealer. He'd go around and he'd do diskette. It was all diskette trading for us. Thankfully, I'd never had a cassette for the Atari. I say that it's a bit, you could look at it as a boast, but I didn't mean it. I don't mean it that way. It's just that the disc loading times were so much better, and so it was definitely better than the cassettes. But he was the guy. He was the pipeline for me for all the games, and he was a bit of a local legend. He figured out a way to get around the copy protection on Ultima 3, and it was funny. I don't know how he figured it out, but anyway, when Ultima 3 was loading, this is a weird story, but when Ultima 3 was loading in your 1050 disk drive, it would when the head moved to the next track or whatever the terminology was, you could hear it. It would go eh, 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 eh. On the 15th head move, it did a sort of a multiple seek thing. It went eh, 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 eh. If you opened the door of the diskette drive at that time, it generated whatever kind of error the copy protection was looking for, and it went into the game. But if you didn't, it would just, I don't remember if it said something about bad copy or bad game or something, but it just wouldn't play.
So that was, if you're loading a copy, you had to, on the 15th, you had to open the disc.
You had to open the diskette drive door.
So presumably he managed to fuss this on his 15th go then, did he?
Yeah, well, I don't have any idea how he figured it out, but maybe he was just getting frustrated with it and decided to yank the game out of the drive or something.
And lo and behold.
Yeah, boom, you're in the game. Like, what just happened?
That's awesome.
So yeah, we unashamedly copied the games back then. I did buy some, but not very many.
I mean, it's you give somebody the chance of something for free, they're going to take it, and
Pretty
you know
much.
and to my teenage kind of brain, I thought, well, I wasn't going to buy that game anyway, so what difference does it make? And but in my defence, I did buy a lot of software, but then also copied a lot of software. Not so much in the Commodore 64, but certainly when I moved to the Amiga and what have you, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we continued with that to some extent on the Atari ST, the copying, but I bought a lot more software for the ST than I did for the 8-bits. And in the PC world, which I did eventually move to, well, we all did, I think. I pretty much, I know there's I don't know if there still is. I have no idea. There probably still is a big piracy scene, but I
don't know.
Those of us adults with jobs and everything, you know, once I moved to the PC, it was more or less just buying the games that I wanted.
Well, you know what? I was up in CEX yesterday. If anyone doesn't know what that is, it's an electrical DVD games store. You can buy things and you can trade things in. I was in there yesterday. My girlfriend went into a shop to look for a pair of trousers. I thought, I'll go in here for half an hour. And what did I buy? I bought a Doom 3 for the Xbox, not the Xbox 360, the Xbox. I got that. I got The Last of Us for the PlayStation 3 because I gave it to somebody and they never gave it back. And I can't remember who took it. And I bought, what else was there? I don't know why I bought them, but I bought like Final Fantasy 10 and Final Fantasy 11. And I also got FIFA 15. And they came to, I think it was under £10.
Wow.
I was looking, I've got no interest in football games, but I just happened to be looking at the PlayStation 4 and I was thinking, bloody hell, FIFA, where are we? It's 2023. FIFA 2024 is like 70 quid. I went, I'll take FIFA 2015 for 50 pence. 50 pence. You can't even get a packet of crisps for that nowadays. You know what I mean? You're you know, if you're looking for a good video game system, and you want all the games for pennies, then go and get yourself an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3, because now is the time to get these games. They're going for ridiculous. I mean, The Last of Us, it was like, I think it's £2.50.
I have a PlayStation 3, but pardon me, actually I have two of them. They were our Netflix boxes at home I had one that I got, you know, just to play games back in the day, but then it turned into also the family Netflix box. And then I got a second one cheap at a pawn shop. Pardon me, at a pawn shop for, I don't know, $100 or something. And this was years later. And it was our downstairs Netflix box. But I haven't bought anything. I'm sure you're right. They're just cheap.
Man, even pick these things up. You'll get them for pennies. Actually, I'm going to shame them. I bought Tony Temple's PlayStation 3, the original big. It was a 60 gig hard disk, and it was also compatible with PlayStation 2.
Oh,
I
yeah.
bought it from him, and about a month later, it stopped working.
Oh, no.
So if you're watching this, in fact, I'll remind them. I'll remind them on Sunday. But
Yeah,
to be fair, it worked fine, and then it just went. Probably in hindsight, I mean, I think I sold it on eBay for like 20 quid for parts. It was probably something ridiculously simple. But I mean, you touched on about the cassette and disc thing. From what I gather, a lot of games, the popular games that came out on the Atari, were discs. You really needed a disc drive, and in the UK, it was very, very difficult to get a hold of an Atari disc drive. So
Really?
you were stuck to tape, and so I think that's why this never really took off.
Yeah.
Apart from anything, the Commodore 64 and Spectrum had taken a foothold. But yeah, the Atari sadly died, like a lot of systems. They just never took off. You're never going to be able to sustain 10 various systems. And it ultimately became, in the UK, certainly, it was Commodore 64, Atari, the Spectrum, and sort of the Amstrad. They kind of struggled in third place.
Right.
Just before we kind of move on to the actual topic, I did a video with Lacosa, the Friday Waffle, actually, and we we told everybody what was the best 8-bit machine. I'll not tell you. I'll not give you any spoilers. It wasn't Atari. But we were trying to talk about the keyboard, the physical hardware, and then we were talking about the sound. Now we put it into two parts. We're talking about sound effect capability and music capability. Obviously, we know that the Commodore 64 blows everything out the water when it comes to music ability. It's just incredible, SID chip.
Yeah.
But we both Lacosa and myself agreed that the Commodore 64 wasn't brilliant at sound effects. Lacosa reckoned that the VIC-20 was the machine for sound effects, and I know Jeff Minter, Moose Life, he used the VIC-20 for sound effects. What we didn't know, Lacosa has no experience at all of Atari. He was asking me, where does Atari sit as far as the ability to do sound effects? Is it as good as the C64? Worse? And I said that, and I might be talking bollocks, but the Atari is. You hear an Atari game, you think that's an Atari game. It's got a certain. It's like Mega Drive. You listen to Mega Drive music, you know it's a Mega Drive you're listening to, and it's the same with Atari. Was Atari a capable machine? Was it the Poke Chip or something for sound effects?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. In my opinion, I agree. I mean, I don't think I would have agreed back in the schoolyard days, but I do agree now that for music, there's no question. I mean, I probably would have agreed back in the schoolyard days about the music. It had it has a 4. I'm not the tech expert on the Atari. It has the 4-channel. I mean, I know what it does and everything, but it has a 4-channel sound generator. And I think for sound effects and even for basic music, like it can do decent music. It's capable. It was not that common that you heard good music, though, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
it wasn't used for that very often, I don't think. And even at its best, it couldn't touch the SID. But yes, I would say for sound effects, it was perfectly capable and good. Yeah, and you're right about this. There's a look, that color wheel thing, and that's quite common on the Ataris, and the sound. Yeah, you often can just hear and say, that's Atari.
Mm-hmm. Aye, I mean, I'm a massive fan of the Atari. I mean, I've got a lot of hardware in this room of mine and in a cupboard, and I am looking to basically sell virtually all of it because I've got a Mister now, and we'll talk about that another day. I'm quite happy to get rid of all my original stuff. I want to sell it while it's still working. But there's about 3 machines that I will never get rid of. Commodore Amiga, I got shot of that a couple of months ago. Don't need it. Mister, I'm not interested in and pissing about with Workbench. I just want to load up a game and play it, and the Mister does it crackingly. That's gone. Atari ST will go. The ones I'm going to keep will be the Vectrex, which you can see behind me, because nothing can touch that. It's such an original thing. Commodore 64 and my Atari 130 XE, I think it is.
Yeah.
Now I showed it off. I've got the original Atari 800 still. I call it the tank edition because it weighs a ton. It's got all the metal in it, the iron. Still got that. If I had a huge house in a basement or whatever it is, and money wasn't an object, whatever, I would probably have it in a display cabinet. But at the moment, it's in a cupboard. It never gets used because I can just play every single game perfectly using, the Mister or whatever it is. So I'm not keeping Atari 800. I recently sold an Atari XL 800 XL. I've got the Atari 400. I'll get rid of that as well because it's sitting doing nothing. But yeah, I would definitely keep an Atari because something I've always said to people when I do my live streams and I play, software by Synapse Software and Broderbund and all that, and people say, "Oh, these are great games." I says, "Well, if you like them, go and get yourself an Atari. You'll get an Atari for 800 quid. Get yourself a cartridge. Get all the back. There's something like, I don't know. I was looking at my game base for the Atari the other day there, and there's like 8,000 games, most of which are Boulder Dash clones or homemade version of Boulder Dash using the construction kit. But for all the early games, or at least most of the early games, I've already mentioned them. Drop Zone, all the LucasArts games. You play Drop Zone side by side with the Commodore 64, and the C64 one is phenomenal. It's just a different level. It's fast. It's beautiful. So some cracking games in Atari. It really is.
Yeah. I have too much stuff, but I have also been trying to, with the Mister in particular, as you say, I've been trying to I've been willing to let things go more easily.
It's the actual it's the difficulty of actually selling them that's the problem I've got. You go into eBay and you just they take that much. You think, oh, I've made 400 quid, and then you get the money in your account and it's £312, and you're like, what?
What? Yeah. Well, we renovated our house, a fair bit of our house here in the last year, and so I have a couple of boxes of things that I pulled out to sell, and I haven't even gotten around to selling any of them yet.
See, people say to me all the time, "Don't sell it. You're only going to regret it."
Yeah.
And I know I probably will. I mean, if I want to go and look at my Atari 800 XL, I can't because it's no longer here. But it's the way I see it is, I've had the original hardware for such a long time, and I've had the use of it. I've had the enjoyment out of it. And I'm not going to sound like a martyr and say it's time to pass it on to somebody else, because if that was the case, I should be giving it away for nothing. But the reality is, I'm not getting any younger. I need to try and boost my pension, so every penny that I can get for a bit of hardware is appreciated.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. It's and the reality is you just don't use them. I mean, I don't. I shouldn't say you. I know some people do all the time, but if they had 10 systems, they wouldn't use 10 of them all the time. They'd use one, maybe two of them, right?
Yeah.
And with me, I still have an Atari 2600, my original Atari 2600, somewhere near me, actually, in a box. And I did actually buy some hardware to try and fire it up. I bought a new power brick for it, the transformer, and a HDMI to the television to HDMI. The Ataris here use the RCA out plug. Mm-hmm. So I bought an RCA to HDMI, and I haven't tried yet, but I want to try to hook it up to a TV and see if it still works. I've got a box full of cartridges. But if it doesn't, the Mister's right over there. And that I use all the time.
It just does it perfectly.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Lacosa said he was intrigued as to why I didn't have any nostalgia of the Atari 2600. And I said, it's because I never owned one. I was desperate to get one, but mum and dad refused to buy me one. So I never ever had one. I only got to use it briefly once. A mate bought one. He came up to the house and he actually left it with me overnight. And then he took it away the following morning. So I just binged on Pac-Man and
no sleeping,
Combat.
I'm sure.
And that was it. So I've never had any. I've not interest. I've never had any nostalgia for it because I never owned one.
Yeah, and I never had that big a library for it either. I think back in the day I think we had like we ended up with a half a dozen cartridges over the whole time that we. Well, I still have it, obviously, but you know, my brother and I at the time, we only ever had a half dozen games for it because they were stupidly expensive. You know, they were $40-$50.
Is that how much they were in sort of 1979? That was a lot of money.
The late 70s, early 80s, and so my parents weren't very interested in buying games for it.
I can imagine. Yeah. It's interesting. One of my mates, he had an Atari 2600 back in the day, and his dad's best mate owned a rental shop, and he used to get at weekends. He would go along on a Friday night and say, "Right, there you go." His dad would come back with 2 boxes full of all the games, and he would just get to play them over the week. He had every single game that was ever, well, not released, but whatever games that this place had, he got to play them for free.
That's interesting. I have a kind of I have a reverse story to that. My same buddy I was talking about was the conduit for all the games. He's always been a bit of a wheeler dealer, and you'll remember the Panasonic 3DO. That you remember that they existed, probably. I don't know if you ever saw one. So
I owned one up until a few months ago.
Oh, you did? Okay, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
They had some merit. You know, it's too bad they weren't a little better supported in terms of games. But so what he worked for a rental shop here at the time, and he convinced me, and he did the same, to buy a 3DO, and then we lent them to the rental shop, and we split. We had some kind of deal where they would rent. If somebody wanted to rent the unit itself, we split the rental cost of the unit, and I don't remember. I think it came out that we more or less broke even on the deal, and then at the end of the day, I think I must have sold it to that shop at some point. But anyway, it didn't become the get rich quick scheme that I think he was hoping for. But I think we did okay by it. But so I had a 3DO. I didn't play it all that much because it was in a rental shop.
So you were basically pimping your 3DO, then you were the pimp. Yeah,
that's right.
Here we go. Go in this.
Well, the reason for it was that the units themselves were very expensive, and the rental shop didn't want to buy them, but they were happy to enter into this deal where we split the. And
did they take like $10 or that?
Yeah,
so they would keep $10 and you got $20 between you.
Something like that.
Yeah. We just before we move on, I think I said that half an hour ago.
Yeah.
In the UK, you could hire a PlayStation, and it was something ridiculous. Like you had to pay like a £400 deposit.
Oh yeah, there was a deposit because otherwise the machines would walk away, right?
Yeah. So they actually charged you more than the price of the unit, which probably prohibited a lot of people from actually.
Well, it was just a hold, though, right? It was you would get it back.
You got your money back. Yeah, you got your money back. But I mental. So anyway, listen, folks. Nice and Nasty podcast. If this is your first listen through, I ask my guest, or I give them the scenario. The government has outlawed every single game that has ever existed, but they're going to give you can pick 3 games that you can play forever, and every other game will be banished forever. The game you've got, if it's a Wi-Fi type game, there's internet. Even somebody was going, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't really count. If you want to play an online game against other people, that is available. So, there's other people out there playing these games, but you can pick 3 games. And the downside to it, I also ask you to pick 3 games, which are so bloody awful, annoying, easy, too difficult, or you just quite simply hated them. So I'm going to ask Rob to pick game number 1. What game? We'll call it the Desert Island game. You're about to get put on a desert island. What would be your first game that you would take, and the reasons why?
Okay, so we'll start with the good ones, the ones we would play.
Yeah.
Well, this was much easier for me than the bad ones, I have to say. So I am a big fan of games. You would maybe call them sandbox games in a way. So the first, I don't know that these are in any particular order. Maybe I'll go from number 3 to number 1, I suppose. So there's an old text terminal game called NetHack, which was a descendant of the original. There was a game called Rogue. This goes way back to Unix terminal games. And I got exposed to this when I was in university because we would do programming on an old Unix. It was like a mainframe kind of thing. It wasn't technically a mainframe, but a beefy back-end computer. And we had labs full of these text terminals. And of course, there were games on them. And NetHack is one that I spent so many hours on, to the detriment of my studies. And I still occasionally to this day fire it up. In fact, I've been filming or recording a series of me playing NetHack on my desktop, and I haven't put any of them up yet. But once I get 10 or 15 of them in the bag, I'll start publishing them on YouTube. But so NetHack would be one. It's an adventure game. It's a dungeon adventure game, but it's all text interface. So back in the day, it was much more your imagination and the strategy of it. And it's a hard game. I have beaten it in my life once or maybe twice, and it's super difficult. Anyway, so that's
so that. It's purely text-based adventure. You're saying Unix. I've heard of Unix. What year are we talking about? Is this before home computers were a thing?
No, home computers were a thing. I would have gotten exposed to this in about 80. When did I start university? 86. So it wouldn't have been my first year. So it's probably around late 87, early 88 when I got exposed to this.
Wow.
And when I say text-based, it's not like Zork or, you see a house on the road kind of a thing. You are moving a character around a maze, and you run into monsters and other things, traps and whatever, but it's all, the graphics are text. So it's all ASCII. So your character is a little ampersand symbol. That's the player. And monsters, like I don't know, an orc would be a little O. And you have an inventory and that. So it's basically a dungeon adventure game without I guess graphics. I mean, it has graphics, but it's text-based display.
There was no sound, I presume.
No sound. No.
That is awesome. That is a great choice. Presumably, did you use the cursor keys or like the Q?
Well, so that's right. I don't think these terminals had dedicated cursor keys, so it was actually J, K, L, and I. So you use them like cursor keys, basically. But so I still have muscle memory for that.
So how long would it actually take you to complete it if you knew exactly where?
Days. You could save the games. You could save the games in progress. Right, you had a user account and a certain file storage quota that you had as a user of the system, and so it would write out a save file. But unless you were an administrator on the machine, which none of us were, you couldn't duplicate your save files. So it was a permadeath situation, right? And I still play it that way today. I don't. I'm sure it's probably not just related to this, but I think they called it save scumming in the day, where you would restore your save, but you couldn't do that on these Unix terminals. So it was just a permadeath kind of game.
Yeah. So
you die.
Yeah, you said you played it recently. You're going to obviously put out a video, which I'd look forward to actually seeing. What is that running like an emulator or a PC? Or?
It runs. It was actually compiled for any number. You can get Rogue for Amiga, or sorry, you can get Rogue as well. Rogue was kind of the original one of these games. That's why they call them rogue likes. You probably heard that term. But you could get it for. I had it for my Atari ST. There was an Amiga version. You can get it for DOS, and my main operating system at home is Linux. Although I broke down and bought a Windows PC here a few months ago. Mostly for Steam stuff. You can play a lot of Steam games on Linux, but the experience is better on Windows. And what was I talking about? Oh, so Linux, it just runs natively on Linux in a terminal, a terminal window, as opposed to a physical terminal, but it's the same experience.
And it's just strictly a one player. Obviously, it's not online or anything. It's just you against.
It is strictly a one player game. Yeah. However, there was a weird sort of interaction where what the game would do is when a character died, when a player died, it would write out. It wouldn't do them all, but it would take that level that the player was playing on, and it would pull it back, and it would create what was called a bones file. And you could encounter bones files from other players on that system. So you wouldn't actually run into the players, but you could run into their ghosts and their equipment that they had. But their equipment was all cursed. Which is a negative thing in the game. There are ways to remove curses, which is what made it cool. So you could get sometimes really amazing equipment, except that you had to figure out how to get the curse off of it.
That is awesome. It's kind of almost like a precursor to Gauntlet. You die, and then you can go and steal the keys that the guys dropped.
Yeah, there you go.
Fantastic. Right, that's game number one. What would be your second game that you would?
Let me bring. So that's going to be Minecraft. I've been playing Minecraft. God, I was trying to figure out what year I started playing Minecraft in. I wasn't an early adopter, but I wasn't that late. So it was probably a few years after Minecraft existed when I started playing it, and I've been playing it ever since. I do put Minecraft videos on my channel because I'm playing the damn game all the time. I eventually figured, well, I might as well make videos about it. It's easy to talk while you play. And so I do that. I just enjoy playing it. I know there's a huge multiplayer aspect to the game. And I shouldn't say never, but I've very rarely done that. It doesn't appeal to me. It's just, you run around, you set your own kind of objectives. Like I build ridiculous things and just explore the world, and I've enjoyed that for years and years. And it's mainly your imagination that limits you. And I often will, if I'm playing it just for relaxation, I'll often sort of be watching a YouTube video and playing Minecraft at the same time.
Yeah, it's just a go-to kind of game. It's a game you can just, you can dip into. The funny thing is, it's not a game I've really played. I mean, I know what the game is. I've played it very briefly, and I think the reason I've never actually gotten into it is because my daughter got into it, and I would go upstairs to her bedroom. She'd be playing Minecraft with her friends, and I kind of look upon it as a kids game,
sure,
just because she plays it. But I've seen some impressive videos. I mean, I believe that there was somebody had. I think somebody had. There was a limit to how high you could go, but then somebody had hacked it, whatever, to remove that limit, and because of that, there was there were people had recreated New York and all this kind of stuff in it, which I would love to see that. I would love to actually see if that was possible.
I should go looking for that kind of stuff. I've seen pictures of crazy builds, I think they call them, in Minecraft, and I've done some really. Most of my things are kind of oddball, but I've done some large things that have just taken forever to actually build. You don't do them all in one go. You just kind of chip away at it. But
so, do you think the game is more? I mean, you play it one player. you think it's more this is a digital Lego? Is that
In a way, that's kind of how I use it, to be honest.
mm-hmm.
But also just it's a weird mix between a Lego and an adventure game. You know, you have to avoid monsters and things, and or fight them if you're out running around at night, and because they only come out at night. The basic ones, although you can seek some out if you want to. If you delve very deep and you find the deep dark, there's a monster down there that scares the crap out of me when I run into it. It's it's called, what the hell is it called? Anyway, it doesn't matter. There's a monster down there that I have yet to figure out how to do anything but run away.
I mean, it's insane, you know, when you look at the graphics, the guy that designed the game, it's just building blocks, it's blocky as hell, but the character that they're able to put into these kind of graphics is that's an appeal all of its own, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not about the graphics, and I guess that's a common theme in my good games picks. For sure, yeah. Not about the graphics for me. It never has been, really. I mean, obviously, back in the days of the Atari and the Commodore, we always wanted the coolest thing. But even then, you know, you look back, the games that you played the most, it wasn't really about the graphics. It was about how fun the games were to play.
I think that's something that people of our generation, we were lucky to be into this hobby right at the very, very start, when everything kicked off, from the first Pong machine to seeing Space Invaders, and the fact that you could actually interact, you could move this thing pressing two buttons. The graphics got better and better and better and better and better, and we've hit such a kind of cusp. We've hit this sort of ceiling, and my interest in graphics grew as each generation came along, and then we got to the Xbox 360, and I thought, wow, look at this. We're now playing sort of like super VGA games on my TV, and it's not blocky at all. And then they've continued to evolve, but my interest has then started to go back down, and I've kind of gravitized towards games that are like Beam Rider and things that have got shit graphics, but it doesn't matter, because we learned to appreciate and enjoy these games. And so we've, you know, it's like somebody who only goes to a buffet at a wedding, and they only eat ham sandwiches. Whereas if you think, well, I like ham sandwich, I like cheese, I like blah, 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 you can go in and you can just enjoy the buffet. Whereas other people go, oh, I don't like ham sandwiches. we like it all. Bring it on.
That's right. Give me the prawns.
So no, I can. And the good side, the flip side to you being good at building stuff, it means when you're on your desert island, you can build yourself a fantastic house made with sand, and
I can carve out blocks of dirt and sand.
And should you get attacked with anything, I'm sure you'll be able to, you'll be able to fight them off with your skills.
I think I'll find that it's not as easy in real life as it is in Minecraft.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that was your game number 2. The last one.
Returning to a theme in a way. My topic, and it might seem weird coming from a guy whose YouTube channel is heavily dedicated to Atari. If you were to ask me my top Atari games, this would be a completely different list. But my number 1 is going to be Dwarf Fortress. And it, not that long ago, not quite a year ago, got a release on Steam with graphics. And but up until that time, it was again a text-based interface, text-based graphics, ASCII graphics, I guess you would call it. And Dwarf Fortress, though, is just an unbelievable game. It's even hard to describe. You're not a character in the game. You tell your dwarves to do things. So you start off with a party of 7 dwarves, and the idea is they're settlers in the world, and they're setting off to found a new dwarven settlement. And you have to direct them to build things and get resources and cope with the environments and the dangers that come about. And the motto of the game, the official motto of the game, has always been losing is fun. So it's very common that your settlement just gets wiped out, and then you start again if you want to play. But it originally was it existed just in sort of a single plane, like one layer of the world, and you would dig from. You sort of faced a cliff face, and you would dig out burrow rooms and look for minerals and things in the earth. Towards the east, and there was a boundary where there was a chasm that basically led to hell, and if you punched into that chasm, the demons would come. And you better be ready for them. But at some point, I don't remember how many years after the game started, the author added depth to the game, so it was a little hard to wrap your head around at first, but you could move up and down in the depths of the world. So you could build 3D rooms and structures and things and staircases up and down and all kinds of stuff. And just the simulation of this world, I don't know if this guy's a madman or a genius, but it's just there's just so much. And actually what would eventually happen is, and still does as far as I know, the amount of simulation going on because of what you've built and the creatures that are in the world and whatever gets so heavy duty that it bogs down your computer. And so anyway, it's hard to describe. And for people that, again, the graphics was a huge barrier for people, right? And the creator was told that for years and years and years, but he really wasn't interested. There were people that made graphics packs for it, so they kind of added a layer of software where it would just take what was happening in the game and then add graphical tiles to it. And that's essentially what's been done for the graphical release. There's a company called Kit Fox Games that approached the creator and said, "Hey, we can get, if you're on board with it, we'll get some graphic artists, some musical artists to do a bit of a soundtrack, and if you'll work with us, we'll put this on Steam and see how it goes." And so that development process took 2 or 3 years, and but it was released just not quite a year ago, or sorry, I think it was December of last year. And it made a pretty big splash amongst people that care about stuff like that. And I think it did pretty well because they're still developing it. So of course, I bought it immediately. Prior to that, it had been actually the same kind of shareware concept that Jeff Minter used to do, where they would say, if you like this game, send us some money. And I did, actually, more than once over the years. I sent them typically $20 at a time. I'd just fire $20 their way because I was playing the game so much. And what they used to do, if you wanted, was it's a guy and his brother. The brother, I think, doesn't do any programming. I think he was like a tester and an idea man. But they would send you a crayon drawing of your choice. Now, I didn't get a crayon drawing. I don't think, or did I ask for one? No, I don't think I ever received one. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But that was their reward, right? You could say, "Oh, I want to see a dwarf fighting a giant raven," and so they would do a crayon drawing.
It sounds a bit like the early Patreon thing, where if you get benefits, if you pay more, you get sent whatever it is. It sounds like that was the kind of precursor.
That's right, and they did, in fact, eventually. I think they fired up a Patreon as well.
Yeah. So what was that on? Was this running under the Unix again? The very first one.
So yes and no. Their primary development target was DOS, like a terminal in Windows. Yeah. But they also did a Linux version of it, which was my thing.
I mean, it sounds very much like the precursor to the kind of games that I hate now, just because they take up so much time. But your Fallout 4s and your Zeldas and all these, even your games like showing my age here, like the Settlers on the Amiga. You've got to mine, you've got to collect consumables and raw materials and do.
That's right.
So these games were getting made long before they actually.
Oh yeah, it's a resource. It's a resource management sort of a thing, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. And I'm not sure what's so fascinating about it for me. It's so intricate, and there's the goal is to survive, and you kind of once you've played enough to sort of get the basic survival thing down, that's not that hard once you get into it. And then people start building things, and I've seen videos where people have just made some epic things in Dwarf Fortress. It's weird to describe. It is hard to describe, but there's something about that kind of a game that is just, for me, fascinating. I just you can spend your whole life on games like this, which obviously would be a bit of a waste. But if you're going to be playing some games, you might as well play things that really you get.
Well, if you can only play 3 games, it's better to have games like that than something simple that you can complete in half an hour.
Yeah, I think that's where I was coming from. Like I thought to myself, well, what are the games that I have played and still play that have just sucked more time than you could imagine out of my life, and those are the 3 for sure.
Great choices. Sure. Right, it's not all ice cream and strawberry topping. Unfortunately, now we're going to take things down a notch. I need you to pick 3 games that are just complete bollocks. You hate them. They're too easy, too hard. They annoy you. Or just whatever.
I was tempted to bring up S. Munnery. Do you remember that discussion?
We'll leave that one for Jeff Minter to pick. Yeah.
Poor old S. Munnery.
To be fair, he's probably had more publicity out of Jeff Minter than he deserves.
That game was dire, but I never ran into it other than, I did try it obviously after it was discussed.
Almost saying S. Munnery programmed a game. Was it on the VIC-20?
I don't remember.
It was VIC-20. It was Asteroids on the VIC-20, and it was so bad that Jeff Minter thought, "Fuck it, I could do better." And,
that's
here
right.
we are.
Yeah.
40 odd years later, Jeff is still putting out games.
Well, we should actually thank S. Munnery then, shouldn't we? Because he was the inspiration. It's like, hell, I can do better than that. Well, these aren't in any particular order, and I just realized there's maybe a small theme here too. This discussion won't take too long, I don't think. I had a hard time picking a third one, and then I hit on it. So strip poker on the 8-bits, any 8-bit strip poker.
I'm sorry to say, I was going to lie and say, oh, I never saw these. I would be a lying bastard. I remember the Artworks strip poker games. Yeah,
that's the one. That's the one I'm talking about. It was on the Atari. I'm sure it was on the Commodore and the Apple and everything. Just brutal. You're playing poker against the computer to hope to get this heavily pixelated woman to take some of her clothes off. and I did play it, obviously, but I don't know why, because even when you got to see the topless person, it was just, it's like, oh, okay, well, there you go. It doesn't look, it doesn't look very good. I sure wish I could see that in real life.
It obviously sold well, because I'm sure there was a sequel to it, and I can put my hand on my heart and say I've never played these games since 1984, whenever. But if I remember rightly, it used to play a little awful tune in between her being clothed and taking her top off. It used to go brr, 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 and then it was something like really, it was that bad. It was like awful. It was like a sound effect.
Oh, we better put some sounds in here somewhere. It's a game after all.
And then my mum would go, "Are you playing that dirty game again? I can hear the sound of it." The only good thing about it, if your mum walked in and she looked at it, she wouldn't have a clue what it was. But the graphics were horrendous. They really, really were.
What is that supposed to be?
They were obviously digitized, but they were really awful.
Oh, they're just terrible.
But you know what? It was there was a market for them. It was new technology and teenage
absolutely.
boys. That was it.
They probably did all right, actually, because of young men or older boys that thought it would be titillating, right? It'd be exciting. I mean, you would have done better off to go steal your uncle's Playboys.
There's a market that needs tapped into. All you mobile developers, there's a one. Yeah, get the strip poker on the phones. I'm sure folk will buy them.
Not anymore, man. Have you seen the internet? You can stumble onto those. You can stumble onto that stuff even when you're not looking for it.
I've got to say, out of the 10 or 11 of these that I've done so far, that's going to be the best crap game so far. That was awesome.
Well, so I'm going to briefly mention one that I alluded to, Daikatana. That was so heavily anticipated, and it was just so terrible. As a PC, for me, it was a PC game, and it's like, why did we buy this?
I can't actually say I remember ever playing it, because I remember reading a review. I think it was probably PC Zone or something.
Yeah.
Reviewed it, and it was like it got, I don't know what it got, 62% or something, and then I wasn't interested. But you know, I people that watch the channel probably know that I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to interview John Romero personally down at Blackpool last year, and when he was, you know, his head was getting bigger and bigger, as I say, is the best, you know, one of the forefather of the first person shooter. Doom, incredible game. It made me buy a PC. Doom 2, wow, you know, Barons of Hell and God knows whatever, Heretic, all these, Hexen, and then there was Daikatana. What the fuck happened there, John? Anyway, he just kind of nodded and smiled and went, yeah. And I think, if I remember rightly, he just said that they just kind of they went on, they pimped it out there so much, and you know, this is going to be the best game ever. And as Peter Molyneux will know, when you do that and it doesn't hit the highs, then it just comes crashing down amongst you. So what made the game so pish?
Well, I think what it was really was the hype. You know, just you had such high expectations. Same kind of thing if there's a movie, you know, that has just been promoted and hyped so much. This is such a great thing, and then you go to watch it and you're like, what are you even talking about? This is terrible. I think that was what it was. You were expecting this great experience, and it was just kind of more of the same. You know, it was. The game itself, I don't think was terrible, but it wasn't what it was built up to be.
So if it hadn't been for the hype and it was a new software company that released it, would that game appear in this list tonight?
Probably not, actually. But I think I went halves on it with a friend of mine, and it was just, we didn't ever play it very much after sort of the first night or two. It's like, yeah, we're not really enjoying this.
Yeah.
So I think that was it, right? It was the hype, and then you spend some money. I was like, well, meh. If some other company had released it, it probably wouldn't have cost as much, and I probably would have played it a little more. But it didn't hold. It really didn't hold my interest at all.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than really looking forward to a game. I suppose it could apply to anything, films, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the result is a crushing disappointment.
That's right.
And at least a film, you say, well, that was shite. That's 3 hours. I'll never get 2 hours. I'll get back.
Yeah.
But when it's a game, you buy a game to get hopefully 10, 20 hours out it. And then you get a game that's so bad, you're like, I'm never going to play this again. It's awful. And you couldn't.
It is.
And I always argue, if I bought a pair of, do you guys call trousers pants, by the way? Yeah. You do. If I bought a pair of pants from a UK listeners, trousers, and I didn't like them, I could keep my receipt, take them back, say, look,
Yeah.
you know, they're too small, too big. You didn't have that option back with software. If you took, I never ever took a game back and said, listen, I want to take it back. I want to get my money back. Well, why? I said, because it's shite.
It's
Well,
terrible.
you've bought it. You're not getting your money back. And
No,
you know, and the shops had things that said, you know,
no
software
refunds.
cannot be returned.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is
No, they
terrible.
wouldn't unless it didn't work at all.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. Yeah.
So what we used to do is we would like peel the label off. We would make a copy of it, peel the label off it, put it on the copy, and take it back to the shop. And then when they tried to load it, it wouldn't load, obviously. And yeah, we did that. And I think there was somebody I was talking to recently, and they said that they ended up putting a magnet up to the disc to stop it working. That was the lengths we go to kind of take back duff games. But yeah.
There you go. That never occurred to me. Probably because I didn't buy very many games back then. You could take a needle or something and run it across the diskette. The disc.
I remember taking a game back to the local computer shop, and it was before we had sort of mainstream shops selling games, and it was Ranorama by Hewson on Atari ST. I think it actually came out on the. No, I'm thinking. The game I'm thinking is something completely different. But no, Ranorama. It was kind of like a gauntlet type game.
Okay.
And great game. Tried to copy it, couldn't copy it. So I just peeled the label off and put it on that. And again, to any younger listeners, when I say a disc, just think of a 3D printed save icon. I put the.
Right. There you go.
Somebody actually told me that at work. They said they showed their kid, do you know what this is? They went, it's a save icon. I thought, yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. You know, I had that discussion at some point, and I don't remember how it came up, but, you know, like, why is that the save icon? And, you know, well, it's the history of it, right? Save to disk. But there's no context anymore. Like, what is that? Nobody knows, unless you're probably, I don't know what, 45 and up, yep. Right? Crazy. It's funny. And
yeah.
Anyway.
If you've got but I missed a trick there. I actually gave away a box of something like 700 3D printed save icons. I could have put them on eBay for like £1 each. There you go. You can put it on a wee stand, whatever. Anyway, I took the disc back. I peeled the label off, put it on the disc, took it back to the shop, and I said, "This is what's wrong with it." I said, "It won't load." And the guy put it in, wouldn't load, and he took it out and he looked at it, and he looked at me, and he looked at it again, and he looked at me, and he went, "Listen, I know what you've done. You know that I know what you've done. I'm going to give you the money back, but don't try this shite again with me."
I'm surprised he didn't boot you out of the shop. Get out of here! Get out of here!
So yeah, that was. So what was your second choice there? Dakatania. Yeah.
Dakatania.
So that is game number 2, and your last one,
well,
game from hell.
I'm just gonna. This is one that I did eventually experience in real life. I heard it was terrible, and it was in fact terrible. It was the titillation game, sort of, but weird, very, very bad on the Atari 2600, called Custer's Revenge, and it was just awful. And not only just awful, thematically it was awful. Even back then, when we were a lot less concerned about things that we probably should have been more concerned about, you know, the game was just terrible. It was in all aspects. You know, the idea was that this, I guess, General Custer, kidnapped, you know, a woman, an indigenous woman, and then wanted to have sex with her. It's like, well, even back then, it's like, well, this is pretty sketchy, you know, and just, it was just bad. But
that, I mean, I've certainly heard of it, and I can still visualize a screenshot of it. Was that actually a game that was sold commercially?
It was, yeah.
Unbelievable. Was it was it covered over and it was like for adults only or something?
I think so. I'm actually just gonna Google the box. Custer's Revenge. You probably like to have your guess.
I thought that was some kind of hack that somebody had actually done.
No. It was a real game. Oh, game. Yeah, it said adult. Here we go. Gaming Ads Museum. Oh, this is Facebook. Oh my gosh. This is. Yeah, it says adult, and it was by Mystique. Oh, it presents Swedish erotica. What? I don't know what's Swedish about this. But anyway, if you Google Custer's Revenge cover or box, you'll see it, and it's just you got a cartoony Custer showing it with his butt hanging out, and he's slavering over, I guess, a princess.
We should not like tied to a cactus or something.
What's that?
Was she not like tied up or something?
Yes. I mean,
she
was.
It's a fucking awful game. I mean, I don't even really want to talk about it too much in the channel, but
no, I don't want to either. It was just
pretty dark overtones, or undertones.
Well, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Not only was it just a terrible, terrible game, the idea of it was also just, as I said, even back then, it was like, why? Why did you think this was a good idea?
I mean, I'm presuming it must have been like mail order only, or was it be like some adult shop that sold it or whatever?
You know, that's a good question. I don't actually know. I never got it at retail, but I do know that it was sold. So there you go. To dirty old guys that, I guess, or whatever. I shouldn't say guys, but that would be the only ones buying.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few games I would say are pretty shameful and should probably be forgotten, and that's certainly one of them.
That's definitely should be forgotten, and I guess from that point of view, I shouldn't have even brought it up.
But. I mean, they could have brought out a strip poker on the Atari 2600. I would pay money for that.
There you go. That probably would have done better, and at least it wouldn't have been had those terrible ideas. You know, presumably,
yeah, I mean,
if you're playing cards with somebody, you both want to be there.
Well, you know what? You've absolutely hit that. You've come up with probably at least two of the best god awful games ever. That is phenomenal. Listen, Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, mate. We've known each other for such a long time. It's great to finally see each other in person. Great. Rob is the quintessential Atari guy. He's got a massive amount of Atari videos. If you want to, watch Atari stuff, go and check his channel out down below. Like I said, Atari 800 is a great machine for, classic games, and Rob demonstrates a lot of these. It's like a great channel, and obviously if Minecraft is your thing as well, Rob is the man to check out. You're a good guy, and you've got you're a great voice, perfect for YouTube. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. So listen, Rob, thank you very much, Squire, and I says we'll catch up soon.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Meister Stewart. And it's been great talking to you. That was one of the delights when I came across, well, obviously I watched your channel for a long time. And when I became aware of the Discord, I thought, okay, yeah, I'll have that. And it's been great being able to talk to you a little bit and get to know you a little better. That's fantastic.
Okay, Rob. Cheers, buddy.
Thanks a lot.